Good morning, everybody. I'm Farmer Dave with Nelson Creek Farm, coming to you on a very cold and chilly December 28th, 2023. It is a very blustery and wind chill factored day today. That right there's a storm front line coming in from the southeast, and let me tell you, that wind is colder than it is in North Dakota. So let's get back into the house and I'll tell you what's going to go on in today's show. Yeah, we're going to cover what's going to be coming up in 2024 here at the farm. So stay tuned. Welcome back, everybody. I'm Dave again here with Nelson Creek Farm, and now for the bit of good news that we've had here at the farm. If you recall in one of the previous videos, I was making a fire down in the old coal-fired stove with wood to heat the house because the pellet stove here behind me to my right quit working. Well, after contacting Comfort Built, the manufacturer, they sent me a suggestion, and it was a silly little igniter deal that it warms up and ignites the wood pellets. I didn't think this was it, but it turns out to be it was. You won't be able to see it, but it has a slight downhill bend to it right there. In fact, you can actually see where the metal is warped on the side I'm looking at. Anyway, what has happened, this thing has gotten so hot that it bent and went downhill, and it touched the tube that it goes into in the back of the stove that holds it. Well, that created a dead short, and it kept blowing the fuses on the stove. Had I known it had been one of these, I'd have had this thing changed that morning when it went south, but I didn't, so I didn't, and yeah. But anyway, glad to report that I already had these in stock. I got one more spare, and the stove's working again. Say, now that Thanksgiving is over, I can tell you this joke. Did you hear about the turkey that got into a fight? It had the stuffing knocked out of it. Now, before we get started on what's going on here at the farm, or what will be going on in 2024, there's a little bit of a housekeeping thing I need to take care of. So, let's get right with it. Ta-da! Nice clean shaved. Yeah, Santa Claus is over with, so time to get back to being Farmer Dave. Now that I'm a little cleaner and ready to go back as Farmer Dave, we're going to get started on a list that I've made up of some of the things we're going to be doing, and I'll put a deal up over here, so if you want to jot them down and see some of the other stuff that's going to be going on, it'll appear right up over my shoulder here. One of the things we're going to be working on is our old steel-wheeled, new idea, number 4 hay rake. It needs about 18 new tines or teeth on the bales that roll around to move the hay, and it has an extension on one set of wheels that we're going to remove and move it back in. The extension was for the thing to be able to straddle bean rows for raking dried beans into windrows so that a combine could come along and pick them up. So we're going to be taking a look at that. Might leave it on there, don't know. Depends on how big of a pain it is to get it off and narrow it back up to its normal self. We're also going to give it a kind of a general once-over. There may be some bearings or bushings in the 3 little trailing wheels that are steel, that are about 15 inches around or so, maybe 18. And we'll check on those, see if we need to put some bearings in there, because if I get into hay production, I'm going to need to use that hay rake. One of the other things we're going to be dealing with is the new to the farm 3-point disc that I had delivered here about the time we did the farm sale, the first part of September, no, it was the first part of October. My friend Dale brought it over. It's a little 6-foot disc. It'll go behind the LS tractor and whatever else we want to use it on. And I bought that specifically for garden plots and whatnot that I'm going to mention here in a bit. But anyway, we're going to check it over, see if it needs new bearings. We got a couple of disc blades to replace, and we're going to throw some we're going to attempt or try some of Eastwood's rust preventer product. It'll be rolled on there and it just kind of helps stop some rust from forming on the frame and whatnot, and we'll slap a coat of paint on the thing. We're going to do the same kind of work to the old 10-foot International Harvester disc that we have here. It's the old drag disc. You've seen me pulling it along behind the Super M and whatnot. Got to check the bearings on it. I don't really have to replace any of the blades, but I might change out the front blades to notched blades to help cut stubble and trash and whatever. Notched blades, as I understand it, make them a little more difficult to pull because it takes a little more oomph, but we're going to take a look at that when we get there to it. Next up, a couple of years ago, a lot of you remember that have been following me for quite a while, I hauled home behind my little pickup a hay wagon chassis. Well, we are going to take a look at that. There's the center beam is bent, so we're going to look at maybe straightening that or leaving it. Throwing a coat of paint on the chassis. I've got some new tires, 16-inch tires that are car tires that go on those little narrow 616 rims that are already powder coated, so we're going to see about taking care of all that. Plus, I'm not only going to build a hay rack deck and headboard on the thing, we're going to do some sideboards and maybe a tailgate with a set of steps on it and handrails, just on the freak chance that somebody wants to use it for our upcoming class reunion, or my upcoming class reunion that we're going to have in a couple of years. So if they want to ride through the parade or whatever, or people hauler here at the farm when we're doing a pumpkin patch or whatever, that's what we're going to be looking at doing also. One of the other items that we got to attack this summer or spring is that 5-foot bush hog rotary mower that goes on the back end of the tractor. You've all seen me run it with Stinky and the new LS tractor. It definitely could use some work on it. If you recall, this summer the blades got cocked at an angle. Instead of being, I'm going to borrow this thing, instead of being straight through, they were cocked at an angle. Instead of being straight through this way, they were kind of locked at an angle this way, and they didn't go straight across anymore. They were kind of goofy. So we'll be taking a look at that. That wasn't the best example, but hey, it was within reach. So we'll be taking that apart, doing some work on that, and at least cleaning it up and maybe throwing some of that rust preventer paint underneath it, that sort of thing. Now, the big one, and we'll have to see how this goes, is we're going to resurrect the Allis-Chalmers B. I've got to pull that front end loader off of it. I've got new front and rear tires and tubes to put on the rims. After the rims are going to get sandblasted, the front ones will be painted. The rear ones will be powder coated silver, or I will paint them. Depends on what the powder coating outfit's going to charge. We're going to do a 12-volt conversion on it, not because I need it to be 12 volts or I could put it back to 6-volt system, and I'd have no heartburn doing that, but I may be needing it to run a weed sprayer. So I can apply that organic weed killer that I've been making. It's a mixture of Epsom salts and vinegar and that sort of thing. I'm going to try to run a little 12-volt pump, electric pump off of that instead of a gas-powered pump, just for spot spraying and that sort of thing. So those are 12 volts, so I need to have that tractor set up with 12 volts. So we're going to do that. We'll put the 3-point hitch on it, do a little bit of other tune-up work, that sort of thing, change out some belts, hoses, that type of deal. Might even get into it far enough to change the thermostat in that thing, because it got awful hot for a few minutes that I was running it this fall. So yeah, we'll look at that. Then the really big thing, and the reason why I got to do the Allis-Chalmers B, is Stinky. Yeah, that little 8N is getting pretty tired. It is pumping oil, engine oil, up into the radiator, so I'm pretty sure I've got a blown head gasket. In fact, I'm almost positive I do, because when I first got that tractor, some of the head bolts were loose. In fact, there was one or two was finger tight. So I'm pretty sure I've got a blown head gasket in that, but that's a lot of work to take the hood and grill off the thing, take the gas tank off to access the head and lift it off. So this year, if we can get around to it and have enough time to do it, what I'm going to do this year is, because the PTO shaft is starting to twist from being hung up on that mower and hitting something and it's screeching to a halt right quick, we're going to pull out that old 1 1/8 PTO shaft that is factory stock on that machine. We're going to replace it with one that's 1 3/8. We'll do that, and while that PTO shaft is out, we're going to go ahead and drop the hydraulic pump out of Stinky. You gotta take the PTO shaft out to change out the hydraulic pump. Now, will I rebuild the pump, or will I just buy a new one? For as bad as that thing knocks, I'm pretty sure there are some extra worn parts in that. I don't think it's just the yoke with the piston on it, if you're familiar with those little pumps, with water and stuff that's gotten into it over the years. I think I would probably be better ahead to just replace the pump. But we will get into that if and when I can get into working on Stinky, thus having the B Alice Chalmers around. We're going to take the seat off of Stinky and take off the hydraulic lift cylinder assembly that the seat bolts to, that's right on top of the transmission. And I'm going to take a look at replacing the piston and or the cylinder that works the lift mechanism. And the reason why I'm attacking that is I've got to put new bushings in that housing for that rock shaft for those lift arms to roll up and down on. Right now they can jiggle sideways. Those bearings are so wore out. So yeah, Stinky may be down for a couple of months while I'm getting parts lined up to repair it. So that's just some of what's going on with the equipment. Now, for stuff around the farm. This winter, while it's cold and I can't get out into the shop and do something, back here behind me, I have shelf brackets and I have some tile that I'm going to put on the wall here up about 4 foot or so, probably about the bottom of that IH sign right there. That says Nelson Creek Farm on it that Old Red Tractors gave to me. So we're going to have a shelf right here in this corner that I can put other signs and stuff on and decorate that up a little bit. Then when it does warm up this year, I do need to finish up some work on that outhouse. The door expands and contracts so much that the latch mechanism doesn't catch it all the time, so we're going to have to figure out something to do with that. One of the major things that needs to be done this year around the farm is, if anybody's been watching this for a time, we take the tractors in and out of the old milking barn on either end. The doors and being run into, but the weight of the doors is breaking the framework loose around them to the point where they're going to fall off and the barn is going to literally collapse one of these days. So I'm going to have to get some heavy angle metal pieces that you see on buildings and structures with big beams, T-shaped or L-shaped, that sort of thing that you can run bolts through. I'm going to have to get some of that to patch those doors and the framework back together again to get everything to hold, and then we'll have to rehang the doors. Make sure they're all square. And while we're doing that, we're going to take the pressure washer, blast all that loose old white paint off of that thing, and repaint the barn red. So here's the next thing for you folks to comment on. I'm going to paint it red, of course, the barn, but I have seen both white and kind of a charcoal grayish black trim, like on the corners or around the doors and whatnot. Like your opinion on what color to paint that trim, either white or that charcoal grayish black color. Anyway, let me know what you think there. Next up, one of the projects we're going to do this winter is we're going to get into the spare bedroom here at the farm house, and we're going to turn it into a pantry to store fresh produce in from outside and canned goods, that sort of thing. So we're going to convert that, and you'll be along for that one. So that might be kind of something of interest to some folks. Now, the other thing we're going to do, as I mentioned it, when we pulled the dog run out of the backyard, I had to take down a section of fence panels. It's 1x4, I think it is, dog-eared cedar, all attached to an 8-foot long framework. And I can pull these panels off and do stuff with them. I'm going to see about purchasing some more of those panels from the local home improvement store and some posts. And we're going to continue that fence north from where it turns to the east now, toward meet up at the end of the garage. We're going to go north out towards the driveway and encompass the apple trees that are out there. And we're going to turn that area into a garden area as well as my backyard. But we're going to get started out there yet because I have a willow tree that needs to come down in the backyard yet. So yeah, we're going to have a big garden deal here. And that leads us into the next thing. I'm looking at making money here on the farm. The farm has got to start paying for itself once again. So we're looking at something that's going to be two parts. One is I'm going to plant a bunch of sweet corn out in the west field, and hopefully I can get a variety that's tall enough because we're going to plant it in such a fashion that it'll make a corn maze out there. So not only will I be able to sell the sweet corn, I can sell tickets for people to come through and walk through a corn maze. Now, in conjunction with the corn maze, I'm also looking at doing a pumpkin patch with maybe a little entertainment stuff for the kids. You know, the cardboard cutout of Farmer Dave with hole in where the face goes. They peek through, somebody takes their picture, that sort of thing. So there's going to be a little bit of stuff getting built there for that. Now, one of the other things that goes along with that is the old shed, the old storage shed that's here. It was a granary. It was two barns actually put together. So when you look at it, the peak of the roof is like this. And if you look at the one end, you can see a seam that drops down. That's because it was actually kind of a lean-to shed with an opening in it for them to put grain and store stuff in it for the cattle at the milking barn. On the other side was just a roof that was held up by some posts that was the early garage here at the farm. Well, they ended up raising that up, made the roof peaks all match, and siding it in. The floors aren't even in there. The building's leaning every time the wind blows really badly. It's a post deal in the corners, and the posts have rotted off, so there's nothing supporting them. So we're looking at disassembling that shed this spring and using the lumber from it to build a little roadside stand that looks like this. Now, I've already talked to the county about it. They don't like it because they can't tax it because it will be built on skids. So it'll be portable, and they don't like that sort of thing, but you know what? Screw them. Anyway, the idea behind that is to drag it all over the farm here, probably north of the house. People can drive in off the street, buy their produce or whatever else it is that I've got in there for sale, leave the place, and go on their way. Now, when it comes time for the corn maze and the pumpkin patch, we can hook onto it with a tractor and drag it down there to the pumpkin patch and corn maze. That way we can sell the tickets and kind of keep an eye on the things there for that. So yeah, it'll be a twofold deal. That's going to take a lot of time, and that's going to take priority over doing something like repairing Stinky. So Stinky may get shoved back a year. We'll just have to wait and see how this summer goes. And speaking of summer, don't forget, in May, we're looking at going to Got to Be Everything North Carolina Festival or something along that lines. I'll put a link in or picture here. Most farms have some sort of form of livestock. So in 2024, I'm looking at considering getting chickens. not for the meat, but for the eggs. And I'm also considering getting into beekeeping. Yeah, I went and talked to a bee dealer about the house, the little nest box thing, whatever you call it, and all of that. And he gave me a price for X number of bees. And I said, well, what if I get an extra? And he says, well, that'd just be a free bee. Well, that's going to wrap it up for today's episode here of things going on at Nelson Creek Farm. It's too cold to be outside doing anything right now, and I don't have the facilities to be outside doing anything. So this is going to be the last video. And something else that's going to be the last for 2023 is another joke. What's about 4 inches long, probably about 2 inches around in diameter, and absolutely infuriates women when you pull it out of its hanger? Any ideas? It's a toilet paper tube that's empty. Yeah, that infuriates the ladies. Anyway, I'm Farmer Dave wishing you all well. As always, don't forget, right down there, we hit that big red thing that says subscribe on it. Give us a thumbs up, thumbs down. Let me know what you think of it in the comments. Don't forget to comment on your choice of either the white or the charcoal gray/black trim for the barn when we paint it red. And yeah, keep on watching. The first video for 2024 will be coming up soon now that the days are getting longer and the temperatures might start warming up a little bit in middle of January. So we'll be out and about doing stuff outside once again. And if we can get into the shop with some of the equipment, we're going to start working on the equipment. I think first thing up will be that little 6-foot disc. So anyway, I'm Farmer Dave wishing you well. Y'all be careful out there and have a good one. Bye-bye for now.